Let's talk about our SCADA Data Gateway. Our SCADA Data Gateway, or SDG as I might refer to it later, was first built as a protocol translator almost 20 years ago. It was built with the same source code libraries that we license and sell. Over the course of these 20 years, we've added support for new features and use cases. We've added support for new protocols including IEC 61850, DNP3, ICCP or TASI2, IEC 6870-5-101, 103, and 104, Modbus, OPC Classic, and OPC UA. And today, our SCADA Data Gateway is used by hundreds of customers all around the world. Recently, we did an enhancement to our SCADA Data Gateway product as it transitioned from version 4, our Windows application, to version 5.1, our new service and web application. Version 5.1 is now compatible with both Linux and Windows. So let's take some time to look at some similarity between the old version and the new. First, I'd like to point out that if you're familiar with any of the previous versions of our SCADA Data Gateway, you'll feel familiar in version 5.1. We've designed both the GUI and the workflow to match the previous versions, although we have added additional features to aid in productivity. It's also important to know that you can upgrade from any version of our SCADA Data Gateway to version 5.1 via the normal installer. To support the new Workspace feature, we've added a migration tool to convert your current SDG configuration into a Workspace. This tool is included in the installer and will launch automatically. If you have any concerns about this, we have created a video tutorial to walk you through this process. This video is on our website and on our YouTube channel. So now let's talk about enhancements. One of the first features I want to talk about is that the new SCADA Data Gateway is always running as a service. You no longer have to stop and restart the application in order to reconfigure it. Configuration can be done on the live service via a web browser and a secure connection. We've also added additional security features, including user roles and logins. For example, you can set up a person to act as a viewer who can view all the data in the SCADA Data Gateway, while others might have the role of operator or even super user. To support this feature further, we've added in audit logs. This will allow you to see who is logged in, when they were logged in, and what else is going on in your system. We've also added features to streamline the configuration process, and this includes the ability to create multiple points and create multiple mappings at once, and the ability to save and load different configurations just with the click of a button. This allows you more flexibility when you're working on multiple configurations at a time. A few more improvements for our SCADA Data Gateway can be seen on this slide. We've added in new special views to our GUI to allow for checking of errors and warnings. You can also check on the overall health of our SDG, or check on system and protocol statistics. We've also added a system information bar, which is always visible, to allow the users to quickly make sure the system is up and running and how many resources the host computer is using. You might see performance issue if either your CPU or RAM is close to 100%. We've also added a way to navigate around your logging system easier. You can filter down directly to the information you're interested in viewing. And my favorite feature is that the mapping information is now in line with the point itself. This allows you to quickly see what is mapped to where without needing to navigate to another window pane. Now that our SCADA Data Gateway can be configured remotely, it raises some questions about networking and security, so let's address some of those. Our SCADA Data Gateway does not require access to the internet, and it can be configured via a secure local network connection, and can be isolated for security purposes. This includes limiting configuration to a specific IP address or a list of IP addresses. Our SCADA Data Gateway communicates over HTTPS and is completely encrypted. If internet access or configuration is a requirement, we suggest getting a third-party CA certificate, and if not, SDG also supports self-signed certificates. Our user guide can help you through how to update these certificates. Alright, this will be the last slide we look at before we look at the demonstration. For this video, I'll be finishing up the configuration of a system that looks like this. Our SCADA Data Gateway is in the middle here in blue, and the rest of the network can be simulated by DTM. DTM is our system simulator tool and will be a stand-in for both our IEDs and our SCADA master. DTM has been designed specifically to test gateways, data concentrators, and protocol translators, and this makes it a great fit for demonstrating our new SCADA Data Gateway. If you are interested in the automated testing that DTM can provide, we do have videos on our website explaining this automation testing further. So let's go ahead and take a look at our applications today. The very first one we'll be looking at is obviously our SCADA Data Gateway. On the top here, you'll see our configuration view. That's where you're going to see the devices that we have. So we currently have a 104 database that's going to be supplied to our SCADA master, and a 61850 client, which is getting information from a 61850 server. In this middle section here, you'll see where all of the data points are going to be at. And this includes things like action mask, how we're getting the values, but we'll get into that a little bit later. At the bottom, you'll see our logging. This is where you can see everything going on our system live as it's coming through. In the background, I have my DTM tool. That's our system simulator tool. So here's the 61850 server in the IEDs folder that we're connecting up to. And we also have a DNP3 server here, which is an outstation that we're not connected to. I also have my SCADA master here that's ready to receive the values being sent out of my gateway. So we need to get the values out of my DNP3 outstation and into my gateway. So we can do that by adding a device, go to the root node, right click, go down to TCP channel master, and then we'll go ahead and add this master. Now, if you have any questions about the configuration that you're currently working on, you can mouse over the node that you're interested in, and that will give you some information on that specific node. If you need more than that, if you see a blue question mark, you can click that on any window and get full information on each of the things that you'll be looking at on that window. I'll go ahead and hide these away. I'll go ahead and select a DNP3 device, MDNP3. And I know that I am working with DTM and our SCADA Data Gateway on the same machine, but you can provide IP addresses. So for example, the remote address that I'll be interacting with today is 192.168.1.210. And I could leave this at 0.0.0.0. That just means the gateway can use any network adapter and IP address that it has to access that device. Or I could come in here and give it a unique IP address as well. From here, I just need to give it a name. I'll just name it Master DNP and hit OK. At this point, we'll get to our second window when it comes to configuration. You can come in here and customize things like local link addresses. We can look at the different timeouts, retransmission rates, application layer things, or by default, you can enable or disable unsolicited event class polling. There's also things like authentication, which you could come in here and edit as well, and an advanced area that you might need to look into in the future. Luckily for this video, I'm just using the default everything, and the defaults for the protocol are automatically put in here. So I can just hit OK. Then it's going to ask me what type of data attribute do I want to be able to add to this device. Now, if I click this drop down, you'll see that there's a bunch of different options in here, and I'm only going to be able to select one right now. But don't worry, we'll be able to add more of them later. So it doesn't matter, I'll just add binary inputs. So now I've created a master DNP data device inside of my SCADA Data Gateway, and I can connect up to the outstation connected in my DTM. But if I look inside my binary inputs, I don't have any. So let's go ahead and start adding data points. I'm going to start from the smallest and work to the largest. So we can do one at a time by right-clicking and doing Add MDO. MDO stands for Master Data Object, and this is a master database, so we can click that. And I know I'm going to start at 0, because if I start at 0, that's where my outstation starts for its point number. So this will be our T1 P0, or our binary input 0.0. You could give it a name or a description, which can show up in the tooltip or nearby it, but I'm just going to leave everything default for now. If I hit OK, we'll see that that point was then added to our database. Of course, you could come in here and right-click and do Add Multiple MDOs, and that's going to follow you through the same process. Now, it knows I already added 0.0, so it's starting out at 1, and I think I'm just going to go up to 5 here, and that's going to add all of the points in between 1 and 5. So now if I hit OK, we'll see now that we have all 6 of those points within our SCADA Data Gateway. And we can take this one step further to being able to add even more devices at once. You'll notice we only have our binary inputs here. If I wanted to add more types, I could come in here and add a data type. But I can take that even one step further and go even all the way to the very top level node and add all the points across all the devices at the same time. So if I do import or export points here, and then I select input points and hit OK, it'll bring up a browser. And all I need to do is find the points that I want to import into the system, hit open, and it will show you very quickly that all of these devices have had their points added. And you can scroll through and make sure there's no errors or warnings or anything like that. Now if I go back to my device, you'll see not only do I have a lot more binary inputs, but I also have all my double bits and output counters and all those things as well. If you don't have a CSV file in order to auto add points, you can actually just right click on a master DNP and do auto create tags, and it will reach out to the outstation and just pull everything in. But you lose a little bit of your ability to customize there because you're pulling in absolutely everything. Now, it is worth pointing out that the feature that uses importing and exporting of CSV files is a SCADA Data Gateway 5.2 feature, but that is slated to be released in the near future. So keep an eye out for that. So now we have a database within our SCADA Data Gateway of all these different points, but we need to make sure that the points are actually coming from the outstation when it's changing, and get the values into our SCADA Data Gateway. To do that, you have to update something called an action mask. So if I go to L4 here, you'll see we have action mask 0 through 4. These are the different ways that we can interact with our master DNP and have it communicate to the outstation. So I'll just take a look at action mask 0 right now and click this. That's just how you edit it. And if I drop down what the action mask is, you can see here, it's doing a read of class 1, class 2, and class 3 on the change events. And how frequently it's doing those is listed below. So 2000 milliseconds, every 2 seconds it's pulling these values in. You can have multiple of these action masks running at once, like I do here. So I have another one. I'll just go down to action mask 1 here. And you can mouse over it and see it's doing the exact same thing, but it's also reading class 0 static data. Class 0 static data is basically going to pick up for everything that we possibly could have missed over that time. So this read is going on over the course of an hour. So it's going to be doing the exact same thing, reading class 1, 2, and 3 change events. But in case anything gets left behind or we get out of sync, the class 0 static data will take care of that for us. So I'll hit OK. From that point of view here, we've taken care of everything we need to configure on the master DNP side. We're able to get the database from the outstation into our master DNP, but now we need to figure out how to actually provide that as a 104 database to our SCADA master. So let's scroll down and take a look at our 104 a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and open him up and see that he's already got some of these containers allowing you to add points. If you are very familiar with our previous SCADA Data Gateways, you'll notice that there's only one container for all the points. For convenience sake, we've taken 2 different folders, one used to contain the MDOs and one used to contain the SDOs, and combined them into a similar container. That allows you just to have one place to look when you're looking for certain type of data points. So let's go ahead and start mapping. Again, I'll stick to binary inputs like we've been doing. And I'll just go ahead and grab one and just drag and drop it down here to this single point. And sure enough, it's going to pop up and give you a configuration for it. So I know that I want my T1 P0 to map over to my single point at address, object address 100. So I'll go ahead and make that change and I'll hit OK. It'll give me a success message here letting me know that everything went properly. And when I hit close on it, you can see within the database of our 104 now, we have that T1 P100, and it's being mapped from our T1 P0. If I happen to fat finger something or the configuration needs to change, I could always come in here and click delete mapping, and that'll go ahead and get rid of it for me. Just like last time, if we want to do more than one at a time, you can actually come in here and multi-select all the ones that you're interested in and drag them all over at once. This will give you the same type of layout that we just had before, but it will allow you to do multiple at the same time. So I've got the last one I mapped over was 0.100, so the gateway can assume that I might just want to increase from there. So by default, it's giving me 101, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is actually a really handy pattern because it kind of goes hand in hand with 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But again, this is all completely editable, so you can come in here and change it to, whatever you want as you go through. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. And what we'll end up seeing is if I come here, now I've got all those points mapping. Now, just like last time, you could come to this very top level node here and right click and do import and export points. But instead of doing points this time, we can do mappings. Now, this is actually really interesting, and I do think it's important to build up, to explain how to build up these CSV files. What I'll generally do is I'll do a handful of points, maybe one of each different types or one of each different types of mappings I'm planning on doing, and then I'll actually export it as a CSV file. That'll give me the base foundation of how I can expand it. Open it up in Excel, and then I can expand it out however I want by copying out the columns and what's necessary in there. So to show you what that will look like, I'll go ahead and hit OK. But instead of automatically importing this mapping, I'll actually open it up and go to Open With, just use Excel here. And then you can see exactly how the layout is. So you've got all of your column headers here. And if you have any questions about any of these column headers, it's all described within the user manual. But you can pretty much infer what's going on. So the tag name here, this is the point that's being mapped. And where's it being mapped to? Well, the map name. So you can use any of the features built into Excel to actually build up these CSV files. I just really like making a baseline that I can export out of the gateway first. So I'll go ahead and close this out. And I'll go ahead and hit open on the mappings. And lucky for us, we just see a success here. Now, if anything had gone wrong, you would get a warning or an error message here in the results. It might say something like, hey, you've already mapped this one point to the other. So I mapped those first 6 binary inputs. If those had been in my CSV file, I would have got a we didn't map again because it was already mapped there. So I'll go ahead and close this down, and then we can scroll down and see all of these points have now been mapped automatically for me. What's really interesting about that mapping file I showed you is that if there had been any points inside of my master DNP that hadn't already been created like we did in the previous section I was talking about, it would have automatically created those points inside of the master DNP and then created the point where it would be mapped to. So I could have skipped that entire section, but I did want to show you how you can do it manually to start with in case you want to create a database and map them to different places and you don't want to use this CSV file process. Again, the CSV file process is for our Gateway 5.2, which at the time of posting should be out shortly. If this video has been out for a while, it may already be out, and that feature could be built straight into your gateway. So now we've gotten the values from our SCADA Data Gateway in our DTM. The values in DTM in our outstation are then being pushed to our SCADA Data Gateway via the action masks I showed you earlier, and then automatically being mapped over. But let's take a look at exactly how this is happening inside of our log. So let's say I'm interested in what's happening in the master DNP. So if I just type in master DNP here in the message, it's going to filter out everything not having anything to do with the master DNP. You can also see the arrows and the directions in which this communication is going. So if I go down here to DTM, and just change the values of, say, all of our binary points, and come back over here, we should see that there is some traffic going on. But there's still a lot that we're kind of looking here. I know we just did binary, so if I type in binary, you can actually see all of these values coming across as binary inputs. Since I just did an auto data change and just changed them all, they all went from on to off or off to on, so it's not super exciting to look at, but you can see this traffic coming through. Again, if I just clear that out, go to DTM, make that change one more time, we can see these values coming across the line. Of course, another way you could do this if you wanted to prove that your master DNP was getting these values is actually go to the database itself. They're all on, and I will change them all to off. And then after the values come through, you can see in the log, sure enough, all these values then go to off. So now let's verify the mapping over to our 104. Again, just like before, you can look at it at the database level. So you can go to DTM, right click, do change values once, go back, you can see the values coming in, and then they're immediately mapped over to our 104. But just having the values in the database in our SCADA Data Gateway isn't all we need to accomplish. We need to also make sure that our SCADA is getting a hold of this information as well. So I can look in the logging for that as well. I can come here and type in COT. What that's going to do is it's going to show me if spontaneous messages are being sent out like we expected, and sure enough they are. Another convenient thing that you can do to see what's going on in your system is if you go over here to category and type in event, you can actually not only just see the event data from the spontaneous message we were just looking at, but also the event data from our DNP3 device. So you can actually kind of go through and watch all of these values coming through, being sent in, and then pushed back out. Just like our 104 database, we do have an OPC server and an OPC UA. So if I click on the UA server here, you'll see all of our points have been mapped over. We've been looking at the binaries today, so if I just scroll down, you'll see there's our T1, P0, but it goes all the way up to 400 different points here. So if I go to, say, 100 to 200, we'll see some more of our values here. These are our binary, I think, output controls. And if I created an OPC UA client and connected it up, you'd have access to all that information as well. If you start to add a bunch of devices inside of your SCADA Data Gateway and you need to be able to find them and you don't want to scroll a bunch, it's been very easy so far for me since I only have 3. But just like you can search for points, you can actually search for nodes. So if I type in master DNP here and hit search, you'll find that device right off the bat. And just like you can do that, if I go up to, say, this gateway root node here, and say I want to map over all my P0s, right? Well, I can click search, I can type P0, and then do a deep search here, and that'll look through all of my devices and all of my points list and find all the P0s for me. This will allow me to kind of quickly search down to the points that, say, I want to map. Now I've got them all in one place, and I can just drag them one over a time to actually map over. So that really addresses a lot of our ability to build up and configure our gateway. Now let's talk about security a little bit. Well, one of the security features we talked about was users and roles and the audit logging. So let's go ahead and enable that. We can go over here to settings and go to system settings and then scroll down to the bottom, and under security parameters you'll see enable user authentication. And under the log parameters, you'll see enable audit log. As long as these are checked, these features are going to be built into your gateway. Not all implementations of our SCADA Data Gateway is going to need both of these, but if you do want them, make sure these are checked. It's the first place you need to look. Then what we'll do is we'll actually make some new users. So if I go up here to settings again, I can go to users, and you'll see I already have some users. I have admin, which is what I'm currently working on. Then I have someone I called Tom Viewer. He's just someone who has the role of viewer. And then I've got Sally Super User. She has basically the same powers as the admin. But if I wanted to create a new one, or if you want to create a new one, you go up here to add new user. You give them a name, just like I did previously. You give them a temporary password. And then the first time they log in, it'll prompt them to replace their temporary password with a password that only they will know. Optionally, you can also add their email address. So if I was going to configure our gateway and make some changes, I could send an email out to everyone I know that's interested in that specific gateway and say, between 1 and 2 o'clock today, I'm going to be changing these parameters. If you see any strange activity during that time, it's probably just me changing things. So it gives you the ability to kind of reach out to everyone who has shown interest in this specific gateway. And of course, you have access to your different roles. That's your super user, that's your admin level. They can create points, create devices, create mappings. They have access to all the security features such as adding and removing users. Then if you go down a step, you've got your configurer. That is someone who can configure our SCADA Data Gateway, but doesn't have access to the security parameters. So they can come in and add points, add devices, remove mappings, things along those lines. The operator is one step lower than that. They can come in and execute commands and controls on different points within the SCADA Data Gateway, but they're not able to actually remove any mappings or add any devices or things like that. And then the viewer is the user with the least permissions. They're able to come in and see everything going on within your gateway, but not allowed to make changes to things. Now, the viewer actually has a special thing that none of the other ones have, which is the ability to have multiple viewers at once. You can have as many viewers logged on looking at your SCADA Data Gateway at the same time without any problem. But these other three groups up here, the ones that can actually make configuration changes and operation changes, you can only have one of those total across the full system. So let's take a look at what different users can actually see. So I'll go ahead and log off. And I'll go ahead and log on as Tom Viewer. Hit login. Now, you might notice this pop up on my screen, and I did leave it this way as kind of a reminder to touch on this when I did log in. Without HTTPS, you could see everything being sent across the networks with something like Wireshark, and that would include your username and passwords. So it wouldn't really be that beneficial to have roles if anybody could just pick up those username and passwords. So by default, we use our self-signed certificate, and we ship that with our SCADA Data Gateway. SCADA Data Gateway supports both self-signed certificates and official CA signed certificates. We highly recommend switching off of our self-signed certificate as soon as security becomes a requirement. The process to do this is included within our user guide. So I'm now logged in as Tom Viewer. You can see that up here. And if I go into our points here, you can see I have access to see the values and where things are being mapped to, but I don't have a way to delete the mappings or delete the points. If I go into our binary output controls, right click, left click, I can't actually issue any controls or commands, can't open any breakers or anything. So it really just lets you look at things and know what's going on without necessarily or maybe accidentally messing something up. But if I log off of here, and I'll log in as Sally Super User. Type her password in. Now you'll see I'm logged in as Sally, and if I go to the exact same place Tom was just looking in, I can actually come in here and delete the points, make some changes. I can right click here and change the values, edit the different points. So I have access to all the things that the admin that we were logged on previously can do. You can also go into the audit log here as a super user and see everything that's happened over the course of your gateway being up. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll actually see where I logged on as Sally. There's where I logged on as Tom, and here's everything that I've done as the admin. Now let's say that you're interested in a specific user. So you can actually come in here in the username and type in Tom and see what everything he's done. Granted, he's just a viewer, so all he's really done is logged in and look at things. Or I could type in, admin, admin, and see everything that was going on, that changes have been made. If you're looking for, something went wrong yesterday at, 5 o'clock or whatever, you can actually come in here and make changes and filter down to the specific time and date that happened. So it really just comes down to what you're looking for on how you use this audit logging, but you do have ways to kind of quickly search down to what you are looking for. And we've talked about using HTTPS to hide your information. We've talked about the security added by adding roles and users and audit logging. It's also important to reference the fact that our protocols also support different types of security, like TLS or secure authentication. Things along those lines are also built directly into our gateway and into the protocol. So those are all working too. So now that I've configured everything that I am interested in having set up, I can go ahead and save this off as a workspace. The easiest way to do it is right here at the root node. You can just click Save Workspace. And then once I've done that, it's going to take all the configuration we've done today and save that to a file. And then anytime I want to bring that back, I can just load that file back. To do that, you go to Settings and System Settings. And then I've got a little drop down here, and I can select any of my configurations I've worked on previously and bring them back up. If I need to send this configuration to another one of my coworkers or someone who's purchased a SCADA Data Gateway and they're putting it inside their system and you've been configuring it for them, you can actually download the workspace after you save it and ship it off to them, whether it's through flash drive, email, anything like that. And actually, they just go through and import your workspace and they'll have the exact configuration you had set up. So you can sit in a situation like I am right now, where I've got my SCADA Data Gateway, I'm trying to configure it all up, I have it in a testing environment with DTM being the SCADA master and all the downstream devices, I get it configured properly, I'm happy with how it's working, and then all of a sudden I can just sub out DTM with the actual physical devices and make sure things are still working properly. Then I can send that configuration out on site into the system that's actually been deployed and verify everything still works properly there too. So that's basically all of the new features that we have right now within our SCADA Data Gateway. So today we have taken a look at the productivity enhancements that we've added into our SCADA Data Gateway 5.1 or greater. We've shown off how it's easy to create and configure devices and databases. We've showed all the different types of improved searching that we provided, whether it's in the logs, searching for points, searching for nodes, anything along those lines, and the ability to faster map points. We showed off all of the new views that we looked at today, including the special views. We showed off workspace management and how to import and export workspaces. And for the security features, we showed off the ability to remote configure. We showed off our user roles and audit logging. And we showed off the different ways that you can support the HTTPS in the SCADA Data Gateway and the certificates. If you have any questions about migrating to 5.1, we do have another video on our website available that can step you through this process. If you're interested in either of the application tools that you saw today, you can get an evaluation for both of them at trianglemicroworks.com. And in the future, we're going to have a DTM release and webinar completely focused around the new tools we're adding to automate the testing of your gateway configurations. And of course, for any questions or comments, you can contact us at sales@trianglemicroworks.com.